Don Keller with American Sportfish. My partner Barry Smith and I started American Sportfish Hatchery about 30 years ago. Barry was the former chief of fisheries for the state of Alabama, and I served as a district fisheries biologist. One of the counties that I worked in was Tallapoosa County, which encompasses part of Lake Martin. When Barry and I started to work for the fisheries section 30 years ago, it was kind of accepted fisheries doctrine that there would be no benefit by stocking crappie in public reservoirs if crappie already existed. Now this was based on, some of this was based on the fact that crappie have a very high egg carrying capacity. When you've got 1.5 pound crappie that's carrying 150 or 200,000 eggs, it doesn't take very many of them to produce a tremendous number of offspring under ideal conditions. What we have learned since then is that the egg carrying capacity of the fish is only one factor that determines the success of that population in a body of water. We have actually spawned crappie in an aquarium. When those eggs hatch, the fry are very, very tiny, much smaller than a bass fry, much smaller than a bluegill fry. They look like a little grain of pepper swimming around in the aquarium. When those fry appear, they have a yolk sac that feeds them for about 24 to 72 hours. Once they absorb those nutrients, then they have to get their mouth on some food. They have about 48 to 72 hours to feed or they'll die, and you lose that year class. Well, if you've got a crappie fry that's about the size of a grain of pepper, then its mouth parts are going to be much smaller, so it has a very small food organism that it can feed on. And oftentimes that food is not present when those crappie hatch. It could be, you could have muddy water or windy areas, or for some reason that zooplankton and phytoplankton is not the right size and right density, then you will lose that crop for that year. Doesn't make a difference if you produce 1 billion crappie eggs, 1 billion fry. If it doesn't have the food at the right place at the right time, that year class is gone. Now there was some speculation about whether stocking crappie fingerlings in these bodies of water would be successful, and Tennessee was the one, the state of Tennessee, TWRA, was the one who pioneered this. They started several years ago stocking 3 to 4 inch crappie in reservoirs. One thing about stocking crappie is, how do you know if your stocking has been successful unless those fish are tagged? How do you know where those black crappie that you have in the reservoir are native or the ones that you put in? Well, one way that you can answer that question is by using a black-nosed crappie. It's just a black crappie that has a stripe down the center of its head, and it's referred to as a black nose. Now, we have those on our hatchery, and I'm going to show you one. This is a black crappie, and you can see the black stripe down its head. That way, if a fingerling is stocked in there and you catch a fish 2 or 3 years later and it has that black stripe, then you know that your stocking has been successful, and it was one that was introduced in the stocking program. What size crappie will you want to introduce? Let me show you one of those. You can see that a crappie this size would have a variety of food that it could eat. It could eat small minnows, it could eat small insects, microscopic worms, zooplankton. And you'll also notice even this 3 inch small crappie has a black stripe down its head so you could identify it. So these introduced 2 years later, they should enter the population as catchable fish.
My name is Bobby Wilson. I'm an employee of the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. I've been working for them for 34 years, and I've been the chief of fisheries for the past 3 years. and I've been asked to speak about our crappie stocking program in Tennessee. And we have a very extensive stocking program in Tennessee. We stock probably 5 million warm water fish a year and about 2 million trout a year. But our crappie stocking is the number two. We stock more walleye. That's the number one species that we stock, and then crappie is number two. And coincidentally, in our creel surveys, crappie fishing is number two behind bass fishing in our state, which is probably the same way in most other states, at least in the southeast. And we've been stocking crappie, which was kind of an unusual thing back in the days. Nobody else did it, I don't think, in the country. And we had a lake, it's called Center Hill Lake, located just east of Nashville, about 60 miles, and for years the crappie population seemed to be going down, seemed to be in decline. And one of our biologists wanted to try to experimentally stock crappie back into the lake, because it used to be a pretty good crappie fishery back in the days. And he recommended that, and we said, well, we'll give it a shot. And we did. We started stocking crappie in that lake, and lo and behold, it worked. And it was a success. And the first crappie that we stocked were the black crappie, and then we started stocking the black-nosed black crappie, which is basically a black crappie but with a black stripe down the center line of its nose, and it was a good marker for us to use without having to tag the fish to see if they were recruiting into the fishery. And so we've done that for years. We still do that, but we do see evidence of reproduction in Center Hill Lake, and we've been doing it for at least 20 years now. And I guarantee you there would not be a crappie fishery in that lake if we had not began that stocking program back in the late 80s and early 90s. And we've expanded that program now to other lakes. Dale Hollow Lake is another one that the crappie fishery seemed to be in decline there for whatever reasons, and we boosted it with stocking the black-nosed black crappie again.
And I'm Danny Stone with Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency here on Dale Hollow Lake.
And I'm Greg Cross. I work out at Star Point Resort on Dale Hollow Lake.
We've been stocking black-nosed crappie here since the early 90s, and the impact it's had on the tourism here, I think it's been great. It's give a lot more crappie fishing here. It's a deep, clear lake. We never have had a lot of crappie fishermen, but now it's the talk here on Dale Hollow. We've a smallmouth lake, but now a lot of people want to come here and catch our black-nosed. What do you think about them, Frog? Have it helped your business?
Absolutely. It's helped our business, probably bumped it up at least a third, possibly even a half in the spring and the fall. It's been a real good, it's really worked well.
Our catch rate now on black-nosed is probably 50% of our harvest overall. After we started stocking the crappie, you know, they go, are you stocking black-nosed this year? Are you stocking? That's always the big question you got. And of course, they're encouraging us to stock more and keep it up. They all love it.
My name's Ken Bird. I live in Birdstown, Tennessee, up on Dale Hollow Lake, and been crappie fishing here since I was probably 10 or 12 years old. The black-nosed crappie they've been stocking in Dale Hollow has really improved the creel limit and the size of the crappie. There's a lot of bait here, so they've done really, really well, and they're a lot of fun to catch and even more fun to eat. So it's worked out real good for us on Dale Hollow. So hopefully they'll continue the stocking program, and we'll continue to catch good creel limits.